Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Okay, meeting is being recorded. Welcome, come on into the classroom. It's great to see you today. This summery day, we have actually kind of overcast weather here today in Keene, New Hampshire, but just fixing my lips. It's good that you can actually see yourself. Otherwise, you could be really making big mistakes, like having undone lips. Anyway, welcome. This is Wondrous Roots, your health from the ground up. My name is Becky Montrone. I have a practice here in Keene called Wondrous Roots. I'm an holistic healthcare practitioner and herbalist. So I have a degree in holistic nutrition. So coming from that angle, and I work with people with all kinds of health problems, whether it be looking for wellness, people of all ages up to, from preconception to very elderly, and with every health condition imaginable. So I work with clients in private consultation here in the office in Keene, New Hampshire, 103 Roxbury Street, or long distance like this via Zoom or telephone, whatever tends to work out. And I thank you again for joining me today. Our number here is 603-439-2603. I have a couple of websites, wondrousroots.org and shopwondrousroots.com, and you can reach out to me from either of those. Contact us goes to my private email, and I'm the one who sees those messages and responds to them. So feel free to do that. We're open 9:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. And my client, we have a full supplement shop, and featuring the things that we make here ourselves based on my own personal formulas, original formulas, as an herbalist, and then also supplements for other things. So, nutritional supplements. You can see what we have to offer, shopwondrousroots.com, if you're interested in are unfamiliar. So I think that's all I want to say by way of introduction, except to say that I am really excited about today's program. Today, I've been doing a series, Stop Eating C.R.A.P, well, with periods like as an acronym. And this is the last one. So we've been through, let me maybe share my screen and just kind of walk you through. You might be watching for the first time. This might be the first time you've even seen anything I've done on Rumble or YouTube. So let me do that. I'm going to first tell you how you can participate. If you want to join in the conversation, just click on chat and type, or raise your hand and I'll call on you and we'll all hear you speak and we'll converse, or type into the Q&A and I'll keep an eye on that. Okay. All right. So I think that's it. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's go here, share that. And then I got to get you guys where I can see you. Keep an eye on you and an eye on the chat. Move myself over there. Okay. All right. I think I'm good. And then what I'm going to do is go to my website, wondrousroots.org. Now, yeah, that's my homepage. It's saying that I'm announcing this, that I'm going to be doing this. That'll be gone after I'm done this. But if you go to the Stop Eating C.R.A.P series, it's here on the Food Glorious Food page, and you can go down to the different ones you want. So we'll start out with, anyway, just Stop Eating C.R.A.P. And the first one was on fructose fiasco, how a little molecule hijacked our health, and then sugar itself, and then like the major sugar substitutes like aspartame, sucralose, and saccharin. That's not so major anymore, but Sweet and Low, NutraSweet, and Splenda. And then moving on to the other ones, so that was really, really so interesting to me. And then we did processed foods, ultra processed foods, and then plastics was the last one I did. And here on this page, you can go to the YouTube link. You can go there to watch it on Rumble. You can get the PDF, like what I'm going through when I'm doing the presentation, all there, just as review. So what I'm going to do now is go to today's presentation, which is right there. Pesticides. And this, like, I was going to do this last week. I was totally prepared to do it. I was going to finish it up on Saturday morning. And I was like, whoa, I have so much to uncover here. And then I put out in the email invite this morning saying that I was up to 155 slides. And now since then I'm up to 175, but don't go away. It's really not that bad. A lot of them were just showing you just images, right? So I'm going to be done when I'm supposed to be done. And some of it you might want to go back to and review, but that's what I love about doing these PowerPoint presentations that then you can access as a PDF, download, go back and review. You can also, I don't know if you know that when you do that, but if you go here, you get the table of contents. How come it? Yeah. And so if you're going through and you're like, wow, yeah, I really want to jump to the part about, see all those slides I added, they're just like things that you look at. So don't be dismayed. But say you're like, yeah, I want to see that one, right? You can go back. So just so you know, that's what I love about this, about doing it. It was so great. I had a woman in, she's used to listen to me on the radio all the time. And if I might say, she's like 94 years old, but she's like technically astute and everything. But I said, oh no, Jerry, I'm doing this on, webinar. And she goes, well, that's much better. Because I was showing her how, I have all this stuff, this information here. So it becomes a resource, not just, I heard Becky talking about this and she said a lot of stuff about that. And, there it goes. So it makes me really thrilled. But with time marching on, I'm going to dig right in. Some things I learned, I always do that I didn't know, but things that were very impressive to me that I didn't know. Okay. So probably for you too. We're learning together. Anyway, P is for pesticides, from DDT to the dirty dozen, what's poisoning our plates. Our P's, the part 3 of the 3 P's is we have processed foods, plastics, and now pesticides. So anyway, part 7 and final of the Wondrous Roots Stop Eating C.R.A.P series. I just went through that. Why talk about them? A lot of us, who want to be healthy, we know why, right? That's why we're buying organic and we're doing all that kind of stuff. But you have to, just like plastics, what problems did having plastics solve? And there were a lot of them. It's the same thing with pesticides. You guys who garden, we've all been through it. You get out there, you've got these wonderful tomatoes. I'll never forget this one year, we were living on Royal Lane in Londonderry at the time, and we go out and these horrible worms had eaten they had big mouths like this big, like just ate up all our tomatoes. So we understand the problems of the things we fight when we're gardening. So yeah, definitely need them, right? Pesticides didn't rise by accident to prominence. We have crop losses. So feeding a growing population, we need to be able to grow more food more fast. Labor efficiency, pesticides reduce the need for labor-intensive weeding, pest removal, crop rotation, making large-scale monoculture farming economically viable, shelf life and storage. So, you're picking your crops and they got to be shipped here or whatever, and you've got things that help your crops last longer. So we can't argue that there's a call for pesticides. They weren't just some evil invention for nasty, nefarious purposes. Pesticides were introduced to agriculture as a practical solution to real and pressing challenges. But the short-term gains have come with some long-term consequences that we really cannot ignore, and that in some cases are just coming to light now. Not in all cases, but more and more. So anyway, we have to go back and look at the pesticides. So might be where you might get some yawning and ho-humming in there, but I think it's so interesting to understand what the pesticides are, what the different classes of pesticides are, and how they work and why they're used, before we build a case maybe against them in some cases. So we have to fight insects, right? Insects, pests, insect pests that cause direct damage to crops by chewing, sucking, boring, or laying eggs. So with aphids, beetles, caterpillars, whiteflies, grasshoppers. So for those, we use insecticides. That's one class of pesticide in the larger picture, beginning with DDT and going through to the pyrethroids that we're still using today. The nicotinoids, so I'm going to be getting into those. Insecticides, they control the insect pests. We were talking about these kinds of things. So there are different types of pesticides that do that. DDT is an organochlorine. Going to be really divoting off into organochlorines shortly. Banned in many countries, DDT, which is an organochlorine. Organophosphates, malathion is one of them. Permethrin, I mean, which is a pyrethroid. Some permethrins are natural and better. Some are, but we're going to get into that. Some are synthetic and not so great. And then the nicotine ones, systemic problems and linked to bee population decline. That's another thing. It's not always about what it does to us. It's about what it does to insects we want around us for the ecosystem and you name it. Then you've got the competing weeds, right? This is where glyphosate comes in. It's where Roundup comes in. That's what Roundup is, a weed killer. Glyphosate are the weed killers. So you can't, how are you going to get somebody in there to dig all those weeds out? How are you going to deal with it? Well, we know, and we'll get into that shortly. So yeah, some of the, you can see here, the herbicides that are used to control weeds, broadleaf weeds, grasses, invasive species. And then you've got fungi and plant pathogens. They cause rot. They cause rot, mildew, rusts, and blights, often thrive in wet, crowded conditions. Again, you gardeners, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So we use fungicides for those. And there are different ones that are used. And some of you may be familiar with these. I don't garden anymore, really. We live in a lovely property and our landlords have beautiful gardens, and we plant, Dale plants herbs only, which we do, and we get our vegetables from most of it from Green Wagon or the co-op here seasonally. But anyway, so I'm not hands-on with dealing with all of the different vegetable gardening woes at the moment. I have done that in the past. Anyway, these are some of them. Copper sulfate. So you would say, oh, that's okay, right? It's copper. That's a mineral. Not always the way, that's not always, what glitters isn't always gold, right? Okay. So I'm off on a tangent. Now I put in this slide, which I'm going to use a few times because you guys know I go off on tangents, and I just want you to know that I understand I'm on a tangent and that I do plan to come back. So throughout this presentation, you're going to see a little bit of that. Like now she's off on a tangent. Okay. So I am. And the tangent is on this copper thing. Okay. Organic, but still ecotoxic. Sadly, yes. Beware thinking everything is just grand when you read that word on a product. Here's the skinny on organic copper sulfate. So how or why is it ecotoxic? It doesn't degrade or break down, right? It builds up over time in the soil. Repeated use leads to toxic soil concentrations, harming earthworms, beneficial microbes, and plant root systems. Sulfate is also highly toxic to fish, amphibians, and aquatic invertebrates. Even small amounts that run off into waterways can disrupt ecosystems by damaging gill tissue or interfering with ion regulation in aquatic animals. So again, and algae and phytoplankton impact. So while it's used to control algae, they'll use that. It can also destroy beneficial aquatic plants and phytoplankton, leading to ecological imbalance and oxygen depletion, dead zones. It targets fungi and bacteria broadly, so not just the pathogens, right? It doesn't just go specifically for the ones you want to get and spare the rest. So it can destroy beneficial microorganisms that are essential to healthy soil or compost ecology. We're going to talk about that a little bit about biodiversity and gardening and soil regeneration, et cetera, at the end. Resistance and overuse concerns. So its persistence may encourage fungal resistance or displace more sustainable integrative methods of pest and disease management. So basically, it's natural, it's a mineral, but in overuse and out of balance with the other minerals in the soil and whatnot, we can tamper and tinker negatively with the ecosystem in many different ways. So bottom line, though it's natural, it walks a fine line. It can be used, important tool when used judiciously, but it carries long-term ecological consequences if over-applied. Many organic certification programs allow it, but it's often under strict limitations. So just be aware. Just like, oh, we might just like, oh, it says organic, grab it. It's kind of nice to have a little bit more on the backstory of some of these things. Back on track for a little bit. And even being on track can seem a little bit wobbly. So then we're back to other kinds of pests we're after. We have plant diseases that are bacterial. They cause wilts, leaf spots, soft rots. Often they enter the plant. They enter through damaged plant tissue, fire blight, bacteria wilt, leaf spot. So we use, again, copper sulfate, some antibiotics like streptomycin. And here you can see an example of a bactericidal for plants. And viruses, right? Lead to stunted growth, discolored leaves, fruit deformities, and there's different kinds of them. Again, you gardeners, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And do they have virucides? They don't. They're not alive in the traditional sense, viruses, so they need a host to replicate. So they don't actually have. We have virucidal disinfectants that are used on surfaces to inactivate viruses once they're there, but spraying these on crops or in the environment isn't viable, would harm plants, animals, and soil. So anyway, this is an example of a papaya ring spot virus. So anyway, they have to try to use that to get rid of like the insects, right, that spread the viruses, or try to come up with resistant crop strains. Anyway, not easy. GMO biotech solutions, right. So we're going to get more into the GMOs soon. What makes a plant? Why did they come up with GMOs in the first place? And why are they valued as for pesticides and as part of the pesticide, pesticide topic, the pesticide world? Okay. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about. And then this is so cute. Well, maybe some of you don't think so. That's not the cutest, but look, he looks pretty. He's just trying to eat, right? Poor thing. Rodents, birds, or larger wildlife. And these are some of your things. So, we trap, fence, use repellents, less often now rodenticides, but rodenticides control rodents like rats and mice. So they have different wands. I don't like to look at that very much because that makes me sad. Anyway, nematodes, microscopic worms attack the plant roots. The microscopic worms, these little nematodes, right? Ugh. It doesn't bother me at all getting after those. They feed on inside the leaves and the buds of the ferns, of strawberries, chrysanthemums, and others. Distort or kill the buds or leaves, lesions between the veins of leaves, more common in greenhouses. They have nematicides for those, crop rotation, soil solarization. That's an example of a nematicide pesticide to get after those little bugs. All right, now little ancient pesticide history. Early uses and development. We often think of pesticides as like modern invention tied to industrial agriculture, but it goes much deeper, and that doesn't surprise me because, right, they had the same bugs going on, the same problems, the same weeds, everything that we have. Ancient Egypt, we had natural substances like sulfur, mercury, and arsenic to ward off pests and protect their grain stores. The Chinese were dusting, they used to harvest the grain, remember, and then put them in these big, huge storehouses. The Chinese were dusting their crops with lime and wood ash over 3,000 years ago. Oh, I was still muted. Okay. So early uses in development. Thank you for telling me that, Debbie. I went to clear my throat, muted, and thought I unmuted, but I didn't. Anyway, we often think of pesticides as modern things, but they've had these same problems, going way back as long as people have been farming. But today we have the challenge of the scale, the complexity, and the risks that come with the tools we use now. Sulfur was one of the earliest known pest deterrents used by the Sumerians as far back as 2500 BC. Arsenic, despite its toxicity to humans, was employed in various cultures as an effective means of killing insects and rodents. That's one reason it's presumed now that arsenic levels are found in rice and things like that because of its persistence and I was talking about when we talk about persistence in the vernacular of the pesticide world, we're talking about things that stay in the soil, things that stay in the environment, that we don't use them and they disappear, like plastics. I said, I don't know if I was muted when I said that, so I'll say it again. Nicotine extracted from tobacco plants served as a powerful botanical insecticide known to its potent neurotoxic effects on insects. We make them crazy. It makes them crazy. These early approaches laid the groundwork for pest control, but also foreshadowed the health risks of chemical exposure that would later become all too familiar. I'm off on another tangent. Nicotine is a pesticide. Nicotine, long before the synthetic chemicals took over, because comes from the tobacco plant, right? Talked about it a lot recently in positive light, was widely used as a natural insecticide known for its neurotoxic effects on insects. Nicotine disrupts nerve signals, leading to paralysis and death. Nicotine sulfate was commonly sprayed on crops well into the 20th century. While effective, it was also toxic to humans and animals, prompting its decline with the rise of modern pesticides. Today, its legacy lives on in the form of neonicotinoids, synthetic relatives that target insect nervous systems, but have raised alarm for their role in pollinator decline, like our bees and our butterflies and our, those things. And then I have here, but Becky, I thought you said nicotine was good for us. It's a matter of dose and exposure route. In the brain, low doses of nicotine gently stimulate the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. As a pesticide, low doses of nicotine gently stimulate those receptors. As a pesticide, high concentrations of nicotine were used to overstimulate the same receptors in insects, causing spasms, paralysis, and death. Nicotine affects the central and peripheral nervous systems, and at toxic levels, it doesn't gently stimulate. It overwhelms, blocks, or desensitizes receptor function. So not good. It acts differently. It's because of dose, delivery, duration. Low pulse stimulation of nicotine is therapeutic. High sustained exposure is deadly. And then I'm like, look at marketing, right? Okay, let's take a second look at at that label. Natural doesn't necessarily mean safe. If you look at this, it's a botanical pesticide. You're like, oh yeah, and it's nicotine. I know that comes from tobacco. You're like, that's all fine and good, right? You can't get this. It's actually not. It's banned in many places. And in the United States, it's banned in the EU, the European Union, and Canada. Nicotine sulfite is banned or extremely restricted, yet the label plays on this natural safe fallacy, right? Omits any real toxicological warning. So you got the green cap and it's soft and it just, yeah, and it looks, and of course this is here in India, they're using that. So it's a hazardous material. Yeah, dermal absorption through the skin is also really important. Nausea, tremors, weakness, respiratory paralysis, so whatever, back on track. So fast forward, the 20th century is a dramatic turning point when it comes to our pesticides with some pretty dramatic events. So yeah, and that's not hairspray. So it was found that DDT was recognized in 1939, hailed as a miracle solution during wartime to combat malaria and typhus. It was like, wow. And of course, those things were very deadly diseases. This was super exciting to people. So, but unfortunately, it introduced a host of unintended consequences. As synthetic pesticides proliferated, so did concerns about their environmental impact. And yeah, the pesticide revolution had begun. With it, a growing awareness of the price we may pay for chemical convenience. You just kind of look at some of these things. To a world still reeling from war and disease, DDT wasn't a toxin, it was a triumph. Burst into the scene in the 1940s. Here we got wallpaper made with DDT there. So the kills the flies, mosquitoes, and ants. You go wallpaper your baby's bedroom with DDT. Yeah, clean, odorless, and shockingly powerful against pests. And then this kind of campaign, DDT is good for me. One of the most chilling chapters in pesticide history, however, is a striking similarity between DDT poisoning symptoms and those of poliomyelitis. As DDT use soared in the 1940s and 50s, sprayed liberally on crops, in homes, and even directly onto people, reports emerged of muscle weakness, flaccid paralysis, and neurological disturbances in exposed individuals. So I had a client years ago who, I think in his 70s at the time, and he still had problems with being lame in his legs. And he said he used to, when he was a kid, he helped out on a farm here in Walpole, which is one of our surrounding towns with, a lot of farmland. He said they'd bring the cows into the barn at night, and as they were feeding them, they'd close the barn doors and spray the cows down as they were eating, just spray them all down with DDT. And that during that time, he did suffer paralysis, which he recovered from, but still had overlapping to this day. The symptoms were eerily identical to those associated with polio, leading some researchers and physicians to question whether certain polio cases might have actually been misattributed cases of pesticide toxicity. It's a highly controversial topic, and blah, 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 blah. But in the rise of polio timeline, in context of the rise of polio with DDT, polio existed for centuries. Well, yeah, as a mild illness, typically contracted in early childhood with few serious effects. It was a very common summertime virus in, especially in the southern states here in the United States. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, improved sanitation delayed exposure until later in life, when infection was more likely to cause paralysis. Epidemics surged in the 1940s and 50s, causing widespread panic, leading to the development of the Salk and Sabine vaccines. During the same period, DDT was introduced circa 1945 and used heavily, as we just saw, in agriculture, homes, and even sprayed directly on children. Researchers noted a striking overlap between rising polio cases and DDT use, both peaking in the early 1950s. So again, we can see these kinds of things. DDT, polio reaches epidemic proportions, widely promoted and used in foods. The Salk vaccine is introduced and credited with a sharp decline in polio cases. And in 1972, DDT is banned in the US years after polio cases had already plummeted. So theories and hypotheses. Some researchers and holistic health advocates have noted that the temporal overlap between the increase in DDT use and polio incidence. Hypothesis DDT, a known neurotoxin, may have contributed to paralysis and neurological symptoms mistaken for polio, or may have worsened outcomes of mild viral infections. My mind kind of goes there just based on, it makes sense and it seems logical that if you had a virus out there that led to those things, if you compounded that with exposure to a chemical that also causes those things, you could end up with a real, a real monster, creating a real monster, as we saw in poliomyelitis and paralysis. But this guy, Biskind, I want to focus on him for a little bit. Central nervous system diseases such as polio, I'm quoting him, are actually the physiological and symptomatic manifestations of the ongoing government and industry-sponsored inundation of the world's populace with central nervous system poisons. I'm off on another tangent. Who was this Morton S. Biskind? He was a physician and medical researcher, 1940s, 1950s. His focus was chronic disease, environmental toxicity, and adverse effects of synthetic chemicals, especially DDT. He practiced and lived in Westport, Connecticut, which is Dale and I and Krista lived there. We've actually, our home was in Weston, but Weston is like a part of Westport, if you will. And then a quote from him: when the population is exposed to a chemical agent known to produce in animals lesions in the spinal cord resembling those in human polio, and thereafter the latter disease increases sharply in incidence and maintains its epidemic character year after year, is it unreasonable to suspect an etiologic, which means causal relationship? So this is kind of cool. Got a page on him here. Oh no, it's the wrong link. Hang on. Whoops. Oh, I thought I was going to link to his article and I linked to just the picture. I did not mean to do that. Because there's a really cool page on that. Let me just go here. History, Biskind, Westport, DDT. I'm sure I can find it. There we go. This is the page I want to, I'll fix that before I publish the DDT, the PDF of DDT. Yeah, the years after the Second World, in the late 1940s, however, a Westport physician by the name of Morton Biskind began noticing new ailments and new variations in old ailments in the people he treated, as well as in domestic animals and wildlife. So this is like, I'm a doctor, I'm seeing people come in here, this is what I'm seeing. The maladies he observed initially proved most pronounced in dogs, cats, sheep, and cattle, and included degenerative problems in their brains, internal organs, and muscles. When he noticed a dramatic increase of similar symptoms in humans, he began doing research, consulting other doctors. In 1949, he and Dr. Irving Bieber published DDT poisoning, a new syndrome with neuropsychiatric manifestations, in the American Journal of Psychotherapy. Much of the article focused on what Biskind and Bieber saw as a link between DDT exposure and occurrence of polio. Facts are stubborn, the authors wrote, and refusal to accept them does not void their inexorable effects. The tragic consequences are now upon us. And I'm going to shortly go back to correlate that with what we're seeing today. So again, if you want to dig in deeper, you can go here and actually see those papers from way back when. And you can see here some of the different ways the DDT was packaged there. His key contributions on DDT, early warning on DDT's toxicity, and clinical observation in case studies. Again, his criticism of public health policy. He was critical of the medical and the governmental establishments for embracing DDT without fully understanding its toxicological effects. Yes, fast forward to the COVID era, right? He accused health officials of ignoring evidence of harm in favor of short-term gains in pest control. It was even known by 1945, he says that DDT was stored in the body fat of animals and humans, and that it appeared in their milk. He warned that the public was unknowingly participating in a mass toxicological experiment. Yeah. And there's, again, you can go to his work here. Legacy and controversy, we can see that. Censored, ridiculed, but history proved him to be spot on. His clinical reports linking DDT to human illness were publicly dismissed as unscientific and alarmist, while government agencies and chemical companies aggressively promoted DDT's safety. This professional discrediting and reputational attack effectively buried his warnings under a flood of reassuring PR, delaying broader recognition of DDT's dangers for years. Some more of the posters here, some more of the ads, some more of the marketing for DDT. No flies on me, thanks to DDT. So you wouldn't hurt a fly? Oh, I got my DDT. Don't come after me. Don't get on my food, fly. I'd rather not be able to move my legs. Here, the ladies know it's good. Here we go. Spray everything down with DDT. And here, more milk, stop fly torture to the cows, right? You'll get the cattle and barn spray. That's the kind of stuff that my client was telling me about. But some things never change, do they? Including our failure to learn from history and to be easily deceived by slick advertising and peer pressure. People are gullible, and we can expect this to continue. Yes, forever, as long as the human race is on this planet. Here we go. One small jab for man, right? Scientists hail giant leap for humanity as vaccine success means rollout could start in weeks, with life returning to normal by spring. One little bottle of hope. There it is. Vaccine breakthrough. And how's this for marketing? Salad doesn't cure COVID, Connor. We're pro-healthy eating, we're pro-healthy living, but a keto diet and jogging in the park isn't a substitute for the vaccine. Eat your veggies, get vaxxed. And here, Australia, kids aged between 5 and 11 can now get vaccinated against COVID-19. All COVID-19 vaccines recommended for kids have been rigorously tested. Lie, 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 lie with a smile. Have a yarn to your healthcare worker about getting your kids vaccinated today. Have a yarn as like a chat. In Australia, means have a chat. Get a COVID vaccine. It's safe and it's free. What's better? COVID-19 update. FDA recommends monovalent COVID-19 vaccine. Oh, wow, the FDA says it's good. What's the problem? Those anti-vaxxers, those people just telling us it's a problem, they're unscientific. Oh yeah, and here you go. The combo you don't want, the flu and COVID at the same time, right? Get both vaccines. And then the great triumph, you get to wear a sticker that says you got your COVID-19 vaccine. Be proud of me. And how about this? Got booster instead of got milk. And then the commander-in-chief at the time, I'm getting mine. So what happens? Trickle-down effect. There you go. There you go. COVID vaccines are good for me. DDT is good for me. COVID vaccines are good for me. Right? Fact versus fake. Eventually, things start to come out, as much as they try to bury it. The autopsy data are in, and if you want, you can click on that link and find that there. What they reveal about COVID-19 vaccines and public health oversight. The tip of the iceberg, I promise you, tip of the iceberg. Two newly polished, the paper summary here. The main finding, independent autopsies worldwide are showing credible evidence that some sudden deaths after COVID-19 vaccination are directly linked to vaccine-induced damage, especially heart inflammation, clotting, and organ damage. Most governments and health agencies did not perform thorough autopsies on post-vaccine deaths, often dismissing any possible connection. Patterns seen, spike protein from the mRNA vaccines has been found in damaged tissues, heart vessels in multiple cases, with clear signs of inflammation and vascular injury suppression. Doctors and pathologists who raised concerns faced censorship and professional pushback, echoing how early critics of DDT like this kind were ignored. Oversight failure, regulators failed to investigate or share this information transparently, hindering informed consent and risk-benefit discussion. Big picture, the article argues, this is a modern replay of the DDT era, massive advertising, early mass adoption, and suppression of emerging safety signals now revealed by the autopsy data that can't be brushed aside. Back on track. So I'm going to go forward. There is this Weston A. Price Foundation article, which I alluded to way up here. I'm just going to click on it for you. Right here, pesticides and polio. This is the Weston A. Price Foundation. This is an excellent article. Very long. It goes through all this, and I'm just going to run down and hit some highlight slides because I've got a lot more to cover in the time that's left. Again, this is all there for those of you who want to use it as you want to do some more research on your own. Oh, it was right. Yeah, it was right there. Key points. You can see the polio incidence and pesticide production. You can see how these graphs like that, DDT, polio incidence and pesticide production, lead and arsenic. And you can see those, the lead and lead and calcium arsenate here in these lower lines, going along with the polio, ups and downs. Conclusion, and the article doesn't deny the existence of poliovirus, but asserts that environmental toxins, especially neurotoxic pesticides, likely played a major role in the outbreaks. Okay. Until the advent of AIDS, polio was the only disease whose cause was enshrined in legislation. And they're trying to do that now with the COVID origins too, right? They're trying to enshrine it into what was the origin. Was it a lab leak, or was it a animal to human transference? U.S. public health law stated that poliomyelitis was an infectious contagious disease, yet proof of poliovirus causation is astoundingly weak, and the obvious toxicology was entirely avoided. Rachel Carson, Silent Spring, she was the biologist and author who published that book, and it was really awakened people to the harm, especially of DDT, to the ecosystems. Many of you are familiar with that book. As she wisely said, in nature, nothing exists alone. You just can't kill these bugs or these weeds, and that's the end of the story. Aren't we happy? They're killed. No. So anyway, it led to the banning of DDT in 1972. You can also find that book there if you follow the link, if you're interested in purchasing that or whatever, to the book on Amazon. Rise of other chemical pesticides after DDT. Organochlorines, have to spend some time here. Of course, DDT was an organochlorine, but there are other ones as well. So there's synthetic organic compounds containing chlorine atoms bonded to carbon. Anyway, there are a bunch of them. But the main problem with them is that they're endocrine disruptors. Okay, so they act like hormones and like too much estrogen, xenoestrogens, we call them organoestrogens. And so this becomes a big problem. So many organochlorines mimic estrogen, binding to estrogen receptors and disrupting hormone signaling. This can lead to estrogen dominance effects in both women and men, from reproductive dysfunction to hormone-related cancers, which we have ton of today, tons. So it does all of these things here. Endocrine disruption. Down a little bit. Yeah. Hormones bind to cell receptors and induce a response. Endocrine disruptors bind to receptors and mimic a hormone block, block a hormone binding, interfere with hormone synthesis, whatever. And we have tons of them. It's not just pesticides that do this. Okay, so we have tons of them. You know, our BPA and our BPH and canned foods and things like that, and plastics. And glyphosate, atrazine. Okay, glyphosate, the big buzzword for that is Roundup. 2,4-D, another one. These are pesticides with endocrine disrupting properties. Relevance to human health found in umbilical cord, blood, breast milk, and placental tissue linked to early puberty in girls, lower sperm counts, miscarriage, and developmental delays. DDT and its metabolite DDE is particularly have shown strong correlation with obesity, metabolic disorders, and endocrine-related cancers. This is where we are with our chronic disease situation today. I'm sure none of you would even argue with that. That's just what we see. Why are they so persistent? This is the chemistry. Their multiple chlorine atoms make them very slow to degrade. DDT is a class example of that. It was slow, others came. I'm kind of breezing through this. The global action, the Stockholm Convention, where they actually took in and banned the organochlorines, 2001, 2004. Why, if all organochlorines was DDT singled out and the others allowed to continue? Because of the big push, the silent spring, all of that. And the things that we saw happening, like to the bird in the environment, like to misshapen bird eggs and things like that. Also, the unprecedented environmental persistence and bioaccumulation, remaining in the soil and water for decades, building up in the fat tissues of animals and things like that. It was everywhere. So they got rid of that fast before they really went in and took a harder look at the other similar things. Okay. Introducing and unpacking glyphosate. Roundup, introduced in 1974 by Monsanto as Roundup, marketed as safe. Now among the most widely used herbicides in the world. Its mechanism action blocks the shikimate pathway in plants. But this pathway also exists in human gut microbes. So no conversation about glyphosate can be had without first uncovering the history of GMOs themselves. So Roundup Ready crops transformed agriculture. So the whole idea with Roundup, right, was that it wasn't to make the food different, like we're genetically modifying the food so it's more nutritious or something like that. It was so that we could now make a seed that will form a plant that will be able to withstand just an onslaught of Roundup herbicide spraying, so that they could withstand it. Roundup Ready seed. So most GMO crops are grown by Bayer, Monsanto, Syngenta, blah, 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 blah. So you've got the GMO seed that's part of this whole pesticide picture as well. Health concerns with glyphosate, gut dysbiosis and leaky gut, potential endocrine disruption, probable carcinogen thought of by this Research Council on Cancer, implicated in gluten sensitivity, neurodevelopmental issues, prenatal and infant exposure to ambient pesticides and autism spectrum disorder in children, possible link there, glyphosate and gut microbiota disruption. Whoops. Let me just move that out of my way. I don't think you can see it, but it's in my way. And then endocrine disruption potential. Again, you can look at studies there. Oxidative stress and DNA damage leads to cancer. Neurotoxicity, behavioral effects. Again, you can see that studied there. Male offspring, reproductive toxicity. But here we go, the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And this is what ended up taking it to court. Key lawsuits involving glyphosate and cancer. The Dwayne Lee Johnson versus Monsanto case. The jury found, anyway, he had a lot of use of Roundup over the years. The verdict did award him $289 million, later reduced to $21 million. The jury found that Monsanto failed to warn the products about the product's cancer risk and acted with malice or oppression. And then we had Hardiman versus Monsanto in 2019, a homeowner who used Roundup regularly Also developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The jury awarded him 80 million, reduced to 25 million. This was a pivotal federal case and setting precedent for other lawsuits. Then had in 2019, the polio versus Monsanto. You see RFK Jr. there when they were awarded their judgment there. They were awarded over 2 billion, reduced to 87 million. One of the largest civil awards in the US related to product liability. After acquiring Monsanto in 2018, Bayer inherited the legal storm. It has agreed to pay over 10 billion to settle tens of thousands of glyphosate-related cancer claims. Bayer continues to deny that glyphosate causes cancer, citing regulatory bodies like the EPA, but it also announced plans to reformulate Roundup for consumers' use, removing glyphosate from residential products in the US. And that's where we are right now. Like if you're getting Roundup for your home use. Anyway, and then the attorney for Dwayne Johnson, every major known carcinogen has had a moment like this, a moment when the science finally caught up, when a company could no longer bury it, when people had to actually look at it and say, we have a problem. Okay, how's it's been used? Now, no glyphosate. You can now see that you're getting, you can get these products that they've marketed for. Agricultural, Roundup remains one of the most widely used herbicides in global agriculture today still, with a glyphosate, obviously. Many countries are moving toward restriction or phase out, but in the US, Roundup is still legal, heavily used and entrenched in industrial food production. Rotenone and pyrethins, we'll talk about that. Rotenone, I talked about that when I was doing my program on Parkinson's. That was one that is very dangerous for that. This illustration here is how, shows you how it can be involved in the onset of, leaning towards the development of Parkinson's, like symptomatology. Pyrethins, which come from flowers, and we think, oh, that comes from flowers, so it's all really good. Allergic reactions, neurotoxicity at high dose, B and aquatic toxicity, and so cumulative load considerations. Just be careful about those. Natural pyrethins are better. These are some of the ones that you can look for if you're going that direction in your own home gardening. Synthetic pyrethroid-based products are longer lasting, more toxic to insects and possibly humans. These are some of those names of those. The top pesticide-soaked crops in the US, corn. Glyphosate Roundup for weed control and GMO Roundup ready corn. Corn breakdown. Now, this is the good thing. This is field corn versus sweet corn. So most of the 99% of all US corn grown is field corn. That's from which we get high fructose corn syrup, corn oil, corn starch, dextrose, maltodextrin, blah, 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 blah. That's not the corn we eat here in New England here, or, that's sweet corn. It's totally different. So don't get all upset about your corn here from the Green Wagon. But this is the corn that dominates the processed foods. So if you're not eating corn on the cob, you're still consuming it in chemically laced legacy and cookies, ketchup, bread, and soda, right? So you're still getting that corn everywhere. Off on a tangent. BT engineering, I have to talk about this, and it is getting late, but so BT is, okay, it's a soil bacterium, I'm just going to tell you it in my own words, that produces insect-killing proteins. Okay, so they now make these crops. The crops are BT engineered to have this soil bacterium in them that kills the insects themselves. So the plant itself has the insecticide in it. So that is really interesting. BT cotton, right? It's not sprayed on, it's built into the plant's DNA. Expressed in every cell, kernels, stems, roots, and leaves. It remains active as you eat it. There's no surface residue, so you can't rinse it off or peel it away. It's part of the food itself. Is it safe or just unregulated? EPA classifies BT crops as pesticides, not just plants. The proteins don't appear on food labels. Regulatory agents say it's safe, digests and breaks it down. But BT has been detected in human blood, including cord blood, umbilical cord blood. Long-term health and microbiome effects still unknown. If it kills insects from the inside, what else might it do? So I'm like a marriage made in Monsanto, it sounds to me, right? You've got two powerful genetic modifications were joined in a single seed, one to fend off the insects from the inside, BT engineering, and one to survive repeated herbicide spraying from the outside. That's glyphosate resistance. This stacked trait strategy created crops that were both insect resistant and weed resistant, engineered to thrive in chemically saturated environments. The goal, total control. The pests die because the food kills them. Weeds wither, the crop endures, all with fewer passes over the field and maximum dependent on patented seeds and proprietary chemicals. I call it autopilot agriculture. It's just like, wow, we don't have to do hardly anything here. We have to weed, we don't have to spray. Whoa, I mean, it's just great. Trouble in Paradise, the union begets a monster child. What began as a genetically engineered dream team soon gave rise to a new kind of nightmare. Insects, exposed constantly to BT toxin in every bite of engineered plant tissue, began to develop resistance, forcing companies to add more BT variants to stay ahead. Meanwhile, glyphosate was so heavily and repeatedly used on herbicide-tolerant crops that weeds adapted to it too, involving hardier glyphosate-resistant superweeds. What was marketed as a perfect marriage, pest-proof, weed-proof farming turned out to be an arms race with nature. The result, stacked GMO crops that now require more chemicals, not less, and a farming system that's locked in an escalating cycle of resistance. Wow, we have created a monster. And the big question, the big BT question, although BT engineering has been used in agriculture for over 50 years, we still don't fully understand the consequences of consuming foods that produce insecticidal proteins from within. Did you know that? I had never heard of this till I was doing this research. I had never heard of this. But troubling findings like the detection, okay, suggest they may persist longer than expected. Okay, so we don't know. Is it going to be a problem? We don't really know. Back on track. So we're talking about sweet corn. Sweet corn is fine, but it's less than 1% of total US corn acreage, right? So make sure you know where you're getting your corn. The corn that they sell for you to eat is sweet corn. It's not field corn. But then you want to be extra careful and know your source there because you can still spray and do all of that kind of stuff. Okay. Soybeans, cotton, sugar beets. Sugar beet processing. So again, we're not talking sugar beets is where we get a lot of things like sugar cane and blah, 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 blah. Most sugar beets are genetically modified and treated with herbicides like glyphosate, making conventional beet sugar a hidden source of pesticide exposure in processed foods. So they use this sugar beet stuff in a lot of processed foods, right? So another reason not to eat processed foods. And the good news, these are not the beets you love. And you can see the difference. Table beets are not the sugar beets we're talking about. Alfalfa. You might not be an alfalfa eater yourself. I'm not, but they feed it to the livestock, and then the alfalfa is imparted into those food products that come from the animal. Genetically non-GMO, got chemically treated wheat. Pesticides use glyphosate as a desiccant pre-harvest. So they do that, like they put it on the harvest ahead of time. And then, yeah. Canola, rapeseed oil, watch canola oil. Top pesticide treated crops. Bottom line, field corn, soybeans, sugar beets, cotton, largely blah, blah, blah. They're the epicenter of America's chemical agriculture. Then the dirty dozen. We're all familiar with these lists, right? So these are the ones that even after washing and peeling, these fruits and veggies tend to retain the highest pesticide residue. So these are the ones that if you're like, well, I couldn't get it organic, then skip it, right? You're like, okay, well, I'll wait until I can get it organic. These other ones are the clean 15. They have the lowest pesticide residue. Many of them have protective outer skins or low susceptibility to pests, reducing the need for intensive spraying. So you're like, yeah, I'm not going to worry about that so much. I'm not at the store that has the organic, but you know, I don't feel that threatened by these. Strategies for healthy growing and eating. Finally, growing our own food better and shopping with savvy, grow without the toxins. Healthy Gardening 101, choose safer pest control, look for OMRI listed organic approved products, prefer neem oil, insecticidal soap, or diatomaceous earth, use natural pyrethins rather than the synthetic ones. Time your applications to avoid pollinator activity like early morning or late evening. That's a good tip. How do they work? Neem oil is this way, insecticidal soap, diatomaceous earth. There's a photo of that. Build soil health naturally, use compost, leaf mulch, and worm castings, practice crop rotation and companion planting, for farmers out there, but then for people gardening, right? This is really good for us to know. A lot of people are doing, who weren't gardening, are doing more of that because of today's hostile pesticide environment. Protect the pollinators and beneficial insects, avoid spraying flowering plants, create a pollinator zone with native flowers, encourage ladybugs, lacewings, and parasitic wasps, which are nature's pest control. These are some of the beneficial insects. Avoid these garden red flags. The synthetic pyrethroids, look for ingredients ending in thrin. Herbicides like glyphosate or 2,4-D. Fungicides with unclear labeling or multi-purpose yard killers. Gardening for biodiversity. Your yard can be a microhabitat that supports biodiversity, soil regeneration, and safe food for you and your pollinator pals. I would say the way Tom and Ann do our gardens would fit right in with that. Gardening for biodiversity, planting a variety of species, flowers, herbs, veggies attract beneficial insects, birds, and pollinators. Diverse gardens are naturally more resilient to pests and disease, like they can handle them better, right? Isn't that like us? That's like our immune systems. Those of us who are healthy and strong, we're more resistant to disease in the first place. And then gardening for soil regeneration. Focus on feeding and protecting the soil. Use compost, cover crops, minimal tilling to build organic matter, boost microbes, and lock in nutrients. Healthy soil grows stronger, healthier plants with fewer pests. And then healthy shopping. Where we look for, again, look for your clean 15, your dirty dozen. And then more shopping savvy, know your labels, right? Organic, no synthetic pesticides or herbicides, non-GMO project verified, not necessarily pesticide free, but avoids GMO crops like glyphosate resistant corn and soy. Natural means nothing, ignore it. Go beyond produce. Grains and legumes, especially oats, wheat, and chickpeas, are often contaminated with glyphosate as a desiccant, and choose organic versions. Meat, dairy, and eggs, concentrate pesticide residues from feed. Choose pasture-raised organic whenever possible, right? Because, yeah. And remember, rinse doesn't remove all. Washing helps reduce surface residue, but doesn't touch systemic pesticides absorbed into the plant. For that, it's back to 1. Go with your healthy ones, your clean 15, that kind of thing. Frozen and fresh. Frozen equals, and fresh sometimes. Organic frozen produce is often picked and frozen at peak freshness, affordable and clean, especially in off-season months. I think that's a great idea because usually pick to freeze and it's organic. Whoa, a lot of times much better than your pick to store fresh. Processed foods, think about, highly processed foods are made from heavily sprayed crops, corn, soy, canola, wheat. Think twice about a box of wholesome crackers. And use the app. We talked about that. Karen was talking about the Yucca app last week and the Healthy Living app from EWG as well. So wrapping up, we've covered a lot. Pesticides, if you're feeling a little dizzy and lightheaded from the mental fumes, like me, Here's the good news. In spite of food poisons lurking in our gardens and food supply with care, knowledge, and a touch of savvy, we can garden wisely, shop smart, and feed our families without fear. So here's to healthy soil, clean food, and empowered choices. Go to health. And I also want to say, let's not be duped, and let's look at how these patterns of assuring us all when something comes on the scene, this is wonderful, this is a miracle, and we all need to just rush and do it like they did with DDT and like they did with the COVID vaccines. Let's not fall for it because that will never stop, people. You know that. That will never stop. So anyway, because a little savvy beats a lot of spray. Again, there's so much material in there. I had to thank you everyone for your kind comments. I had to kind of rush through because I had so much material there, but you can easily use that as a resource and go back through, like, what did she say about that? And maybe you want to dig a little deeper into some of those links I have there. So please go ahead and do that. Next week, I am not going to do a program because it is the holiday weekend. And then I'll be back the next week. I think I'm going to do a program on on, I can never think of it when I, oh gosh, it's a P word. I always say that and then I can't think of it. But anyway, it's about the stuff that's in the blood that we get from omegas and stuff like that. And then I want to begin a series on the five senses, the eyes, the ears, taste, all of that, touch. And anyway, I'm going to let you go because I've run over time. I thank you for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend and a great week. And I won't see you again before the holidays, so have a wonderful holiday weekend as we celebrate our nation's anniversary. And be well.